She named 5 female actors she secretly dated. Now we know the reason why. Born Maria Magdalena Dietrich on December 27, 1901, in Schöneberg, Berlin. She came from a respectable, middle-class Prussian family. Her father, a police lieutenant, died when she was young, leaving her and her sister to be raised primarily by their formidable mother, Josephine. Josephine was a disciplined woman who instilled in her daughters a sense of order, duty, and appreciation for the arts, particularly music. Young Maria, however, possessed a spirit that chafed against strict rules. Even as a child, she displayed a strong will and a fascination with performance. Trained in violin and fluent in English and French, she had a cultured upbringing, but an independent streak quickly became apparent. She was inquisitive, observant, and possessed an early understanding that life offered paths beyond the conventional expectations for women of her time and class. This innate desire to forge her own way, coupled with a magnetic charisma that drew people to her, began to shape the woman who would later become a global phenomenon. She was, from the very beginning, a force to be reckoned with, a person who understood the power of creating an image, even as she wrestled with a desire for authenticity that society would constantly challenge. Marlene Dietrich's journey to stardom began not in Hollywood, but in the vibrant, decadent, and artistically experimental world of Weimar Republic Berlin. She started in theater, taking small roles, quickly learning the craft and the power of presence. It was on the Berlin stage and in its burgeoning film industry that she began to develop her unique persona. Cool, detached, yet intensely alluring. Her life and career changed forever when she met the Austrian-American director Joseph von Sternberg. Sternberg was a visionary with a keen eye for talent and, more importantly, an almost obsessive desire to mold and create stars. He saw in Marlene not just an actress, but a canvas upon which he could project his artistic fantasies. His vision for her was specific, a mysterious, exotic, sexually ambiguous temptress. He meticulously controlled her lighting, makeup, costumes, and even her movements on screen, transforming Maria Magdalena Dietrich into the legendary Marlene Dietrich. Their collaboration in the 1930 German film The Blue Angel, where she played the sultry cabaret singer Lola Lola, was a sensation. Her performance, both vulnerable and provocative, captivated international audiences. Following this success, Sternberg brought Dietrich to Hollywood, where she signed with Paramount Pictures. Together, they made a series of iconic films: Morocco, Shanghai Express, Blonde Venus, The Scarlet Empress, The Devil is a Woman. These films solidified the Dietrich image, dressed in revealing gowns or, controversially, men's suits and tuxedos, smoking cigarettes languidly, singing in that unmistakable voice. She received an Academy Award nomination for her very first American film. Morocco is where she famously wore a tuxedo and kissed a woman, an act that shocked audiences at the time and hinted at the gender fluidity that would become part of her mystique, even if its true depth remained hidden. Marlene Dietrich's image, carefully crafted by Sternberg, resonated deeply with audiences weary of conventional ingenues. She was different, daring, and embodied a sophisticated sensuality that was entirely her own. Although her partnership with Sternberg eventually ended, she successfully transitioned to working with other renowned directors like Ernst Lubitsch, Billy Wilder, Alfred Hitchcock, and Orson Welles, proving her talent extended beyond one director's vision. Films like Destry Rides Again, Foreign Affair, Stage Fright, and Touch of Evil cemented her status as a versatile and enduring star. Her on-screen persona was one thing, but her off-screen magnetism and lifestyle further fueled her legend. She cultivated an aura of mystery, controlling her public appearances and interviews with precision. She was known for her sharp wit, her intellectual circle of friends, and her absolute command of her image, from the precise angle of her lighting to the meticulous design of her clothing, often designed by herself. Her embrace of masculine clothing, especially the tuxedo, wasn't just a fashion statement. It was a quiet, yet powerful, act of defiance against gender norms, years before such expressions were widely accepted. It suggested a comfort with ambiguity, a rejection of rigid categories, which, in retrospect, hinted at the fluidity of her private life. Beyond the silver screen, Dietrich dedicated immense energy to supporting the Allied troops during World War II. She became a tireless performer for the USO, traveling extensively, often in dangerous conditions, to sing and entertain soldiers. This patriotic effort, while perhaps surprising to those who only knew her as a glamorous screen siren, revealed a deep sense of morality and courage. It also solidified her image as a figure of substance and bravery, respected far beyond her acting roles. After the war, Dietrich shifted her focus to a phenomenally successful career as a live performer. Her cabaret and concert shows were legendary, showcasing her unique vocal style and unparalleled stage presence. She continued to perform well into her later years, maintaining her allure and captivating audiences worldwide. She was a global icon, a woman who seemed to exist above the fray, a creature of pure, sophisticated allure. But it was precisely within the glittering, insulated world she inhabited that her most closely guarded secrets unfolded. Publicly, Marlene Dietrich was known for her long and unusual marriage to Rudolf Sieber. They married in 1923 and remained married until his death in 1976, a span of over 50 years. However, their relationship was far from conventional. They lived separately for most of those decades, maintaining a close friendship and professional connection, but granting each other complete freedom in their personal lives. This open marriage was a pragmatic arrangement that allowed Dietrich to pursue her career and her numerous romantic relationships without the constraint of traditional marital expectations. Throughout her life, Dietrich had a string of high-profile affairs with prominent men, including the actors Jean Gabin, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., and Yul Brynner, as well as the writers Erich Maria Remarque and Ernest Hemingway. These relationships were often passionate, sometimes tumultuous, and frequently became fodder for Hollywood gossip, though they were largely accepted within the context of star-studded romances. The public saw her as a woman desired by powerful and famous men, fitting neatly into a conventional heterosexual narrative. However, this public image was only one facet of a far more complex reality. While her relationships with men were visible, or at least widely rumored, there was another layer to her emotional and romantic life that remained almost entirely hidden from mainstream view. In the clandestine corners of Hollywood and the international artistic scene, Marlene Dietrich navigated a different kind of relationship, one that carried immense risk and demanded absolute secrecy. It was within this hidden world that she connected deeply with other women, forming bonds that were as significant to her as any of her public affairs. So, let's pull back the curtain on the secret life of Marlene Dietrich. The truth, largely unknown or only whispered about during her lifetime, is that her romantic and emotional world extended far beyond her relationships with men. Marlene Dietrich had intimate, sometimes passionate, relationships with women. And not just obscure figures, but prominent, talented women, including fellow actors, writers, and artists within her elite circle. How do we know this? Marlene Dietrich didn't hold a press conference to announce it. The revelations about her same-sex relationships emerged gradually, years after her death, through the publication of her letters, journals, and, most significantly, the candid accounts of those closest to her, particularly her daughter, Maria Riva. In her unflinching biography, Marlene Dietrich, these sources, combined with the research of reputable biographers who delved into personal archives and conducted extensive interviews, pieced together a picture of a woman whose private life defied the public narrative. The naming of these individuals wasn't a list compiled by Dietrich in a final confession, but rather the careful, sometimes cautious, identification of the women she was involved with, based on overwhelming evidence from her personal papers and the testimony of witnesses. And who were these women? The full list of everyone she might have been involved with throughout her long life across continents is likely extensive, but several prominent female figures in Hollywood and artistic circles are repeatedly named as having had significant, intimate relationships with Dietrich. Here are 5 of the most frequently cited and compelling connections, offering a glimpse into her hidden world. First, the legendary Greta Garbo. 2 of the most enigmatic and iconic figures of Hollywood's golden age, often framed as rivals, yet their paths intersected intimately. Biographers and those within their shared circles have documented a brief but intense affair between Dietrich and Garbo. Imagine the electricity, 2 titans of the screen, both intensely private, both possessing a unique allure, finding solace and passion in each other's company away from the prying eyes of the world. Their rumored connection was like a fleeting, powerful comet in the clandestine galaxy of Hollywood's secret lives. It was a bond based on mutual admiration, shared experiences of immense fame and isolation, and undeniable chemistry. Second, the extraordinary Mercedes de Acosta, a writer, socialite, and designer. Mercedes de Acosta was known within certain circles for her relationships with famous and influential women of her time, including Greta Garbo, Isadora Duncan, and Marlene Dietrich. Dietrich's extensive correspondence with Acosta, now publicly available, provides compelling evidence of a passionate, complex, and enduring emotional and romantic connection. Their letters are filled with expressions of love, longing, and intimate details that leave little doubt about the nature of their relationship. Acosta served, in many ways, as a guide and companion within the discreet network of women who loved women in the arts. Her relationship with Dietrich was a significant thread in both their lives. Third, the flamboyant and outspoken Tallulah Bankhead. A force of nature on stage and screen, Tallulah Bankhead was famously unapologetic about her sexual appetite, which included relationships with both men and women. The pairing of Dietrich and Bankhead seems almost inevitable, 2 intensely charismatic, unconventional women who lived life on their own terms. Accounts from their contemporaries suggest a passionate, if perhaps volatile, affair. Bankhead, with her devil-may-care attitude, was perhaps less concerned with total secrecy than some others, adding a layer of daring to their connection. Their relationship was likely one of shared rebellion, wit, and mutual fascination. Fourth, looking back to her Berlin day, the cabaret singer Claire Waldorf. Waldorf was a prominent and openly lesbian figure in the relatively liberal atmosphere of Weimar-era Berlin's entertainment scene. Sources from that period indicate that the young Maria Magdalena Dietrich had an intimate relationship with Waldorf before she became the global star Marlene Dietrich. This relationship provides crucial context, showing that Dietrich's attractions to women were not something that emerged later in Hollywood, but were a part of her identity from her earlier life, nurtured in a more open European artistic environment before the intense repression of Hollywood. And fifth, a figure perhaps less known to mainstream audiences today, the singer and actress Tamara Dresen. Records and personal accounts suggest Dietrich had a romantic involvement with Dresen during her early Hollywood years. Dresen was part of the same artistic and social circles, and her connection with Dietrich is mentioned in several biographies, adding another name to the list of women who shared an intimate bond with the legendary star. These less famous names are just as important, indicating that Dietrich's connections weren't limited to the absolute top tier of fame, but existed within her broader community of fellow artists. These aren't just rumors, they are accounts corroborated by letters, journals, and the testimony of people who were there or were confided in by Dietrich herself or her partners. So, the evidence that Marlene Dietrich named, or, more accurately, lived these relationships, leaving behind the proof, is substantial. Now, the reason why these relationships had to remain secret is critical to understanding the context of Hollywood history and the immense pressure faced by LGBTQ+ individuals in that era. Firstly, societal condemnation and illegality. Homosexuality was widely considered immoral, deviant, and in many places, including parts of the United States, illegal. Public knowledge of a same-sex relationship could lead to social ostracism, criminal charges, and even institutionalization. Secondly, the iron grip of the studio system. Hollywood studios held absolute power over their stars' lives. Contracts included morality clauses that allowed studios to fire performers for any behavior deemed scandalous or detrimental to their public image. A revealed same-sex relationship would instantly trigger this clause, ending a career overnight. Studios meticulously monitored their stars, employing private investigators to ensure their private lives conformed to the clean-cut image they sold to the public. For a star of Dietrich's magnitude, the stakes were astronomical. Her entire career, her financial stability, and her global fame hinged on maintaining a heterosexual facade. Thirdly, maintaining the star image. Dietrich's image was built, in part, on her allure to men, the exotic temptress desired by leading men on screen. Public knowledge of her relationships with women would have completely shattered this carefully constructed image, confusing and potentially alienating her audience, thereby diminishing her box office appeal. Fourthly, protecting themselves and their partners. Secrecy wasn't just for Dietrich's sake. Her partners, many of whom were also actors or artists, faced the exact same risks to their careers and personal safety. Revealing their relationship would have exposed both women to devastating consequences. The clandestine nature was a form of self-preservation for everyone involved. Living this double life came at a cost. The constant need for discretion, the fear of exposure, the inability to openly share significant parts of her emotional life, these pressures undoubtedly contributed to the complexity and sometimes the isolation of her existence. Yet, within the private world she cultivated, surrounded by a trusted circle of friends and lovers, Dietrich could likely be more authentically herself than she ever could in the blinding glare of the public spotlight. These secret relationships were not just illicit affairs. They were spaces where she could find genuine connection, understanding, and perhaps true love, away from the performance of being Marlene Dietrich. The fact that these truths did eventually emerge is a testament to the enduring power of personal history and the slow, often difficult, march towards greater societal acceptance and historical honesty. Dietrich herself, in her later years, may have become less guarded, or perhaps intentionally left behind the evidence for future generations to discover the full story. Her daughter, Maria Riva, made the conscious decision to present an unvarnished portrait of her mother, including these relationships, believing that suppressing them would be a disservice to the truth of who Marlene Dietrich was. Thus, the revelation wasn't a single dramatic confession, but the brave act of historical preservation and biographical honesty. It allowed the world to finally understand the hidden challenges and the quiet courage required for a woman like Marlene Dietrich to live any semblance of an authentic life in an era that demanded she hide who she loved. After a fall on stage in 1975, which effectively ended her career as a live performer, Marlene Dietrich gradually withdrew from public life. For the last decade and a half of her life, she lived in almost complete seclusion in her apartment in Paris. She refused visitors, rarely even allowing doctors or close friends to see her face to face, maintaining her carefully controlled image even in her solitude. Despite her physical isolation, her mind remained sharp, and her influence persisted. She spent her days talking on the phone to a wide network of friends, family, and admirers across the globe, dictating letters and working on her memoirs, including the fascinating Marlene Dietrich's ABC, which offered glimpses into her thoughts and experiences, though often through a carefully curated lens. Her apartment became a kind of command center, from which she directed her affairs and maintained her connections to the outside world, all while shielding herself from physical scrutiny. Her health declined in her final years, but she will remain formidable. She dictated instructions for her burial, insisting on being buried in Berlin, the city she had left but to which she remained deeply connected. Despite her complex relationship with Germany's wartime past, she wished to be buried alongside her mother. Marlene Dietrich died in her Paris apartment on May 6, 1992, at the age of 90. The immediate cause was reported as kidney failure, but it was a death that came after many years of self-imposed isolation and declining health. She passed away quietly, on her own terms, maintaining her privacy until the very end. Her funeral was held in Paris, attended by hundreds, before her body was transported to Berlin. Tens of thousands lined the streets of Berlin to pay their respects as her coffin passed, a testament to her enduring status as a German icon despite her long absence. She was interred in Friedenau Cemetery, beside her mother, bringing her extraordinary life full circle, back to where it began. Marlene Dietrich remains one of the most compelling and influential figures of the 20th century. She was a style icon, a brilliant performer, a complex woman who navigated the treacherous waters of fame and societal expectation with fierce independence. Her legacy extends beyond her films and music. She is remembered as a symbol of defiance, fluidity, and the power of self-creation. The eventual revelation of her secret relationships with women doesn't diminish her legend. It only adds layers to it. It highlights the courage required to live even partial truths in an era of intense repression and reminds us of the hidden histories that lie beneath the surface of the glamorous past. Marlene Dietrich was not just a star. She was a woman who loved, desired, and connected in ways the world wasn't ready to see. Knowing the full story, including the truth of why those loves had to remain secret, deepens our understanding of her as a pioneer. Not just on screen and stage, but in quietly, bravely, living her own truth in a world determined to deny it. Her life was a performance, yes, but within it lay a complex, hidden heart that yearned for genuine connection, a truth that finally, beautifully, came to light.